We will call this meeting November 12th, Municipal Planning Commission to order. Our first order of business this morning is the election and nominations for our chairman for the 2025 calendar year. So I will look for a nomination for chairman, please. Lloyd? Lloyd nominates Wade Watson. Are there any further nominations? Calling a second time. Any further nominations? Third and final call. Any further nominations? I will ask for a motion to cease voting. Passed by Councillor Vossler. Vote. Carried. Congratulations, Wade. We'll turn it over to you.
Thank you all. Next on the agenda is nominations for vice chairman. I'll accept nominations for vice chair.
Nigel.
Dan moves nomination of Nigel for position of vice chair. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Okay, I'll accept the motion to accept Nigel. So moved. All those in favor of Nigel as position of vice chair? Opposed? Carried. Okay, next we'll talk about the minutes, the agenda for today's meeting. Any discussions, questions, concerns regarding the agenda for today's meeting? Dan moves approval of the agenda for the meeting today, November 12th, 2024. All those in favor? Carried. Next, we'll discuss the minutes for the October 8th, 2024 Municipal Planning Commission. Any discussion regarding that? Nigel moves approval of the minutes as presented for the October 8th, 2024 Municipal Planning Commission. All those in favor? Carried. First application for consideration today is development application 24/176. And Dylan, are you Dylan? Would you take one of the chairs up front here, please, Dylan? So when asked to speak, there's a button to push on there and it will light up, and then you can speak into the microphone. We'll just go through your development application. I guess that will be Becky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is for a setback relaxation, and it's development permit 24/176. The owner applicant is Dylan Giles, and this is located at Plan 0011152 Block 1, and the municipal address is 6003 Township Road 144. Property size is 14.26 acres, and its land use district is Agricultural District 2. The proposal is to construct a 7,200 square foot shop with the setback relaxation of 18.4 meters from the center of the undeveloped road allowance. The applicant is requesting the Municipal Planning Commission's consideration to construct a 60 by 120 shop with a proposed setback distance of 21.6 meters or 70.9 feet from the center of the undeveloped road allowance. This results in a relaxation request of 18.4 meters or 60.3 feet. The proposed shop meets the required setback distance of 40 meters or 131 feet from the center of Township Road 144. The shop is to be utilized for woodworking, repairs and maintenance of equipment, and for storage. As the letter of intent indicates, the setback to the undeveloped road allowance could not be met due to the irregular shape of the parcel and the large elevation changes throughout the property. In September, the applicant attempted to meet all setback requirements and had received development permit 24-176 for this shop. However, the applicant came to discover that the proposed location placed the shop on a hillside and would not work. The applicant is now proposing a new location which results in this proposal. In accordance with section 16.6.1 of the Land Use Bylaw, the Development Authority shall review each development permit application and determine its compliance with this bylaw. When a development permit application includes variances, requests, or discretionary uses, the Development Authority shall assess the application as outlined based on the following criteria in accordance with section 640 of the MGA. Unduly interfere with the amenities of the neighborhood or materially interfere with or affect the use, enjoyment, or value of neighboring parcels of land, and the proposed development conforms with the use prescribed for that land or building in the Land Use Bylaw. In the Land Use Bylaw 2022-09, the Agricultural District 2 states that the minimum required setback from the center of a municipal roadway is 40 meters or 131.2 feet. We circulated the application just to Public Works in this instance, and they replied that adequate setbacks from roads should be achieved. So I did take some pictures of the property. So this is from Township Road 144 looking east. You can see the existing yard site sort of is over that hill, and the proposed shop site location is just on this side of the hill. We're kind of looking more southeast proposed shop site location. Existing yard site again is just over that hillside. And just another shot there. So this is looking into the yard site to the south, down the private driveway. So from the approach, we're looking south, and you can see that hill, and the proposed building site is just beyond that. And just to look east from the yard site. And then just another glance at the yard site with that hill there. Proposed shop is beyond that, and from Township Road 144. So, Mr. Chairman, that takes me to my recommended motion, and that's to approve development permit application 24-176, subject to the following conditions, and with the understanding that it will be constructed as outlined in the submitted application. Any changes must be submitted for approval by the Development Officer or Municipal Planning Commission. Numbers 1 through 9 are all standard conditions. If you'd like me to review them, please let me know. But I'll jump to number 10, which is a setback relaxation of 18.4 meters or 60.3 feet from the center of the undeveloped road allowance. I also have an alternative motion, Mr. Chairman, and that's to refuse development application 24-176, as the proposal does not comply with the minimum setback requirements as stated in the Agricultural District 2 of the Land Use Bylaw 2022-09. And that is my report.
Thank you, Becky. Mr. Gauss, would you like to speak to your application at this time?
Yeah, obviously this process, I tried my very best to make sure that I could meet setbacks. I did even get the site surveyed to put the building in an appropriate location. Throughout there, either there's a huge rise in the landscape, so the hills are too big that it would cost a lot to excavate them, or I'd move simply too far away from existing infrastructure. So there is a well, there's power. And when I moved it to the far, what would be east there, the cost of obviously the utilities getting brought further and further away just got, a little too astronomical for what we had initially planned. So I appreciate you guys reviewing it. I'm trying to stay as far away from the road. Obviously the road itself even veered away from the hill that I'm trying not to build onto there. So I would appreciate your guys' review of the relaxation on that setback would be appreciated, that's for sure.
Thank you. I'll open the floor to discussion from Planning Commission. Motions? Discussion? Dan? You did move your hand, didn't you?
I guess not much else you can do with that property for the way the topography is there, so. I don't know, I guess. I'll make the motion to accept it, I guess.
Okay, Dan moves approval. Of development application 24-176 with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Carried. Your development permit has been approved, subject to meeting the conditions which were previously discussed. The county will mail you a copy of your permit. Since this is a discretionary use, there is now a 3-week appeal period that the public may appeal the issuance of this permit. Excuse me. The permit will be advertised in the Cypress Courier newspaper for a duration of 3 consecutive weeks. If no appeal is filed within 21 days, the development permit will become valid at that time. If you have any further questions, you can contact the assistant planner after today's meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see we have some attendees. We have 10:15, which is Green Cells Indigen Alberta Limited. And we have to be in attendance. Are you Mr. Ashton? No, I'm Courtney's off with the next one. Okay, so you're
Mr. Chairman, sorry. It appears that everyone has attended via Zoom. They won't be attending in person, but via Zoom.
Oh, by Zoom. Okay.
Thank you.
So I see we have 5 people up there, 6. To the applicants, is everyone available in attendance that is going to be speaking to this application?
Yeah.
Okay, so we will start then. This is development applications 21/190 and through the 24/193.
Recording in progress.
Becky, you want to start with this, please?
You bet. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is, like you said, development permit 24-190, 24-191, 24-192, and 24-193. The owner of the property is Hatarian Brethren of Estuary Corps, and the applicant is Green Cells Indigen Alberta Limited. The land use district of all 4 properties is Agricultural District 2, and the proposal is to construct and operate a solar facility, including the construction of a substation, an operations and maintenance building, and temporary laydown yards. The applicant is requesting approval from the Municipal Planning Commission to construct and operate a solar facility. The project includes placement of solar arrays, the construction of a substation, and an operations and maintenance building, as well as temporary laydown yards. The proposed location is approximately 28 kilometers north of the hamlet of Hilda, east of Highway 41, along Range Road 11. The Estuary Solar Project is a 200 megawatt alternating current solar project that will be connecting to the proposed Estuary Solar 1006S substation. The on-site equipment will consist of approximately 416 820 solar modules, a racking system, inverters, collector lines, substation, internal access roads, and a perimeter fence. The selected solar panels will have anti-reflective coating as per AUC approval. Estuary Solar received approval from the Alberta Utilities Commission for the power plant and substation on September 5th, 2024. Estuary Solar conducted a solar glare analysis report in respect of the project. The results indicate that there is likely no incidence of red-grade glare on any receptor due to the project. A noise impact assessment was also produced, and the AUC concluded that the project will operate in compliance with AUC Rule 12 requirements. The applicant was required to prepare an environmental protection plan and a conservation and reclamation plan as part of the AUC's approval process. As per the submitted site plan, access into the site is proposed at one location from Range Road 11. There does not appear to be an existing access approach. Therefore, the applicant will be required to apply for a road approach application to be reviewed and approved by Cypress County Public Works. The nearest residence is located approximately 1.4 kilometers to the west. There is another solar plant which is presently operational, Empress Solar, and located directly to the south. So there is a chart that I included that would be part of your report that outlines the quarter sections for each property. Under relevant legislation in the Land Use Bylaw 2022-09, under the Agricultural District 2, a solar energy commercial use is considered a Class 2 discretionary use, requiring approval from the Municipal Planning Commission. Section 12.21 Solar Energy Commercial states the following. Applicants may submit development permit applications prior to receiving approval from the appropriate provincial or federal agencies. However, the Development Authority shall not approve any development permit application for a commercial solar energy facility until such approvals have been obtained from the applicable provincial or federal agencies. A development permit will be required for all commercial solar energy production facilities that are intended to generate electricity, which is to be sold and transmitted into an electrical distribution system for commercial sale. Commercial solar energy production facilities shall be considered within the agricultural districts and industrial district as a Class 2 discretionary use. The applicant shall be responsible to obtain the necessary approvals from both the Alberta Utilities Commission as well as the Commercial Electric Distribution Company and provide copies of the approval documents as part of the development approval. The applicant shall be responsible to obtain the necessary inspections and commercial approvals from an authorized inspection agency under the Alberta Safety Codes Act as required for any of the equipment or infrastructure associated with the solar energy facility. All equipment and infrastructure associated with the commercial solar energy facility must comply with those setbacks specified in the land use district in which the commercial solar energy facility is located. When a commercial solar energy facility is decommissioned, the landowner will be required to return the solar energy facility location to the same land capability and quality as it was prior to the installation of any of the solar energy equipment. As part of the development application process, the Development Authority will ask the applicant to submit a detailed decommissioning plan to support the development application. And a development permit application shall require, as a condition of approval, that the developer of a solar facility commercial use enter into a road use agreement between the county and the developer. When we circulated the application, Alberta Transportation replied that the subject property is not within noted control as stated in the Highways Development and Protection Regulation, being Alberta Regulation 326, 2009. In this instance, a permit from Alberta Transportation will not be required. Pursuant to Section 18.3 of the Municipal Government Act, the Department expects that the municipality will comply with any applicable items related to provincial highways in an ALSA plan if applicable. And pursuant to Section 618.4 of the Municipal Government Act, the Department expects that the municipality will mitigate the impacts of traffic generated by developments approved on the local road connections to the highway system in accordance with Policy 7 of the Provincial Land Use Policies. And then also Cypress County Public Works replied that the applicant will require a road use agreement prior to starting construction and security will be required. A road approach application will be required for either the use of the existing approach or for a new approach. If any road upgrades are planned on an undeveloped road allowance, an application to Public Works is required and the road will be required to meet county standard. So taking me to my recommendation, Mr. Chairman, that is to approve development permit applications 24-190 to 24-193 inclusive, subject to the following conditions and with the understanding that it will be constructed and operated as outlined in the submitted application. Any changes must be submitted for approval by the Development Officer or Municipal Planning Commission. So conditions 1 through 8 are standard. So if I jump to number 9, All waste disposal shall be the responsibility of the developer owner and at his expense. All waste disposal must be in accordance with the Environmental Protection and Enhancement Act and Waste Control Regulation. Number 10, the developer applicant is required to obtain all other provincial and federal approvals. A copy of all approvals is to be submitted to the development officer. All solar panels and related infrastructure are required to be set back a minimum distance of 40 meters or 130 feet from the center of all county roads and must follow all other minimum setback requirements in the current land use bylaw. Number 12, upon decommissioning of the project, a copy of the reclamation certificate application is to be submitted to the development officer. Number 13, the developer is required to submit an engineer's designed stormwater management plan to accommodate a 1 in 100-year event for the entire development area. The stormwater management plan is to be submitted and approved by Cypress County prior to commencement. Number 14, subject to the developer submitting an emergency response plan for approval by Cypress County prior to commencement. Number 15, the developer is required to submit a traffic accommodation plan. The plan is to be submitted and approved by Cypress County Public Works prior to commencement. Number 16, the developer is required to enter into a road use agreement with Cypress County and be in compliance with the terms of the agreement as it relates to the project to protect Cypress County road infrastructure. The road use agreement is to be executed with Cypress County prior to any loads being hauled on site or any works to enter or upgrade the county road right-of-way. As a requirement of the road use agreement, the developer will be required to provide security to ensure that the developer meets the obligations under the agreement. Number 17, subject to a water supply for fire suppression to remain on site at all times during the construction of the project. And number 18, the solar facility must report to Cypress County if the facility needs to be offline for a period exceeding 6 months. The Municipal Planning Commission will review the report to determine if the facility will be considered online or whether the facility or portions of must be considered for remediation. And just finally, Mr. Chairman, I just have a note to remind you that we'll need 4 separate motions by the board for each development application. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Becky. So would the applicant like to speak to this application at this time?
My name is Paula McGarrigle, and I'm with Solus Energy Consulting, and I work with the applicant. The report that Becky has read is true and aligns with the project overall. We're excited to work with the county and further this project. If there's any additional questions, we'd be happy to take the questions.
You are in agreement with the conditions as presented?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else from the organization like to speak to this at this time?
I think it was all fairly well captured there, to be fair. And nothing further to add. I'm just happy to answer the questions, as Paula says.
Thank you. I'll open the floor to discussion for Planning Commission. Go ahead, Dustin.
So underneath your permitting here, it shows that you're to have water supply on site for fire suppression during construction. What are you guys' plans for after construction? My question being, as a large solar facility, if we ever do have a fire rapidly move through one, it does have the potential to take and start burning off some of your facility. And as we know, that requires a vast amount of water to take and extinguish them. Would it be out of the question to take and have some sort of dry hydrant pond system that works within your 1 in 100-year mitigation system for flooding as well? Because you're going to have some sort of retention built onto that property for that 1 in 100-year flood. Would that be something we could look at?
Recording in progress.
Do we lose him?
I think I lost you and I'm back. It's
Okay.
Paula McGarrigle with Solus Energy. Can you hear me?
We can?
Yes. Okay, I can address those questions. During construction, there will be a water tank on site, a water truck on site for the event of both dust suppression and in the event that there's a fire event. The second thing is during the operation of the solar facility, there will be fire extinguishers on each truck. We have an emergency response plan that we've circulated with the fire chief. The second thing is that landscape management will be a critical aspect with regard to ensuring that any kind of fire is not spread. There is, at the moment, no current plans for containing water on site. However, we are working with the fire department and have the emergency response facility that will be working as part of the emergency response plan with the first responders in the area.
Thank you. Does a fire,
Does that help answer your question?
maybe, does it?
Am I
Okay.
frozen again?
No, you're good. So do we have a standing policy with any of these developments for setting up a plan for emergency response?
So an emergency response plan is required for part of the AUC submission, and it has been circulated with the county what the emergency response plan is.
So the fire response plan is dictated by the Alberta Utility Commission then?
The AUC requires an emergency response plan to be submitted at the time of application.
And they set the parameters for that plan, or is it just a plan?
No, OSHA, Part 7 of OSHA under Alberta has the requirements for what an emergency response plan should entail, and the emergency response plan that we've provided does align with OSHA requirements.
Okay. Any further discussion? Anything? Motions?
And we'd be happy to take any additional feedback from the fire chief associated with any emergency response procedures and protocols.
Thank you. Lloyd?
Just that I know that our fire department does have, they review all these emergency fire responses for all the programs that we have, for the solar and for the windmills. So they've looked at it, and if they go along with it, I'm good with it.
Okay. Any other discussion? Bill?
My question actually would be for staff, and that's not being totally familiar with how these are approved or how these are presented. Is there any charge to the property for decommissioning? So in other words, if something happened and everybody was gone, does the county put a charge in the property to recover decommissioning charges?
The applicant can probably speak a little bit further on this, but typically with our past projects, each company has lease agreements with individual property owners, which covers off the decommissioning plans and any monies that may be set aside for that type of thing. I'm thinking these guys can probably elaborate a little bit more on that for you.
So we'll pass that question on to the applicants, please.
Yeah, so at the moment in Alberta, there's two choices. There's one is that you can have an agreement that covers decommissioning in the lease agreement, or second is that Alberta government right now is contemplating the possibility of a fund that's paid into at a certain year, but those regulations are being formed at the moment and they're not finalized. I'll pass it over to David Ashton to talk about any obligations with regard to reclamation that's in the lease.
Yeah, I mean, we have a full reinstatement clause within the lease, so we are contractually obliged to do that. I think there is an accrual within the lease in the later years to cover that reinstatement.
So would that, within the lease agreement then, is there a condition that if your company, if the holding is sold to another company, that obligation would continue on to the next owner?
Yeah, so the way that these types of assets transfer is as a going concern. So the project is created as a company and will stay an energy generation company. The asset themselves won't change hands, only ever the company, the shares in the company. And so that obligation will remain with whoever. If the asset changes hands, it will be because the company changes hands, not, so it'll never split off. So that obligation will remain with the company for the duration of the lease.
So it's perpetual, stays with the lease and moves on to whomever acquires the asset. I can translate from his Yorkshire accent.
Dan, do you have a question?
So is that a bond that you put in place then, and who controls the bond?
It's not a bond exactly. It's like a cash sweep in the later years. Yeah, bonds are potential, but they're essentially just a middleman when you can do a cash sweep under the lease that covers the reinstatement anyway. So basically, we just have to pay extra rent into an account rather than actually paying a bond provider. So it's like a self-insured bond, if you like, on the part of the landlord.
And when does that start paying in?
The last 10 years of the term.
Okay. Any other questions? Does that answer your question, Bill? Yes. Okay. Lloyd, go ahead.
I'll make a motion to pass, accept it.
So Lloyd moves approval of 24/190 with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Carried. Before I give your improvement spiel, we'll move on to 191. Now 191 has the same conditions presented on that application. Does the applicant have any concerns or discussion regarding development application 24/191?
No, nothing.
Becky, do you have any further input on 191? Is it different enough that we have to discuss anything else?
No, the project is spread over the 4 quarters, so the full section. So the reason we're doing 4 permits is 1 for each quarter, but the project is spread over that full section. I don't have anything else to add.
Okay, good. That's clear with Planning Commission members? Okay, so I will entertain a motion then. So Dan moves approval of development application 24/191 with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Carried. So 192, again, another quarter within the section. Anything different regarding 192? The applicant doesn't have any other concerns regarding application 192?
No, same deal.
Okay. I'll open the floor to discussion on that. Bill, go ahead.
No, that's fine, I'd make the motion.
So Bill moves approval of 24/192 with all conditions as presented. All those in favor? Carried. So development application 193. Again, Becky, no other different input here. And again, the applicant is fine with the condition presented as well?
Yep.
Okay. I'll open the floor to motion. Nigel moves approval of development application 24/193 with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Carried. So your development permits have been approved subject to meeting the conditions which were previously discussed. The county will mail you a copy of your development permits. Since this is a discretionary use, the public now has a 3-week period to appeal the issuance of these permits. The development permits will be advertised in the Cypress Courier newspaper for a duration of 3 consecutive weeks. If no appeal is filed within the 21-day period from the date of issue, the development permit will become valid at that time. If you have any further questions, you may contact the development officer to discuss them after today's meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so next application for consideration today. The man has been patiently waiting. Are you Mr. Bach? Yes. Okay, would you take one chair up front, please? Will Mr. Bernard be attending as well?
No, we got called out to another project.
Okay. So, all right, Mr. Bach, this again is development permit 23/122 revised. Go ahead, Becky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is going to be a little bit different layout, and being that we have new board members today, please let me know if you need me to review something in more depth. But this is a Ward 3 Class 1 gravel pit. It was development permit 23/122. The owner is Ross Creek Quarry Limited, and the applicant is MJB Enterprises Limited. And this is located on the east half of 2793 west of the 4th. It's Agricultural District 2, and the proposal was to operate a Class 1 aggregate pit and stockpile occupying 59 acres on private property within the east half 2793 west of the 4th. In 2023, the Municipal Planning Commission approved development permit 23/122 for the operation of a Class 1 gravel pit, with a condition of approval that a separate development permit was required for any rock crushing activities. In 2024, the board approved development permit 24/132 for temporary gravel crushing from July 31st to October 31st, 2024, 6 days per week. The applicant's letter of intent indicates that due to scheduling conflicts, weather delays, and other unforeseen circumstances, they were unable to start crushing in 2024. Therefore, the applicant has submitted a new development permit application requesting approval from the Municipal Planning Commission to begin crushing operations for approximately 3 months between March 15th and October 31st in 2025. However, upon further review of the previous permits issued to the applicant, the land use bylaw, and other permits issued for gravel pits, administration has discovered that gravel crushing operations form part of the regular activities conducted by a gravel pit. In the past, the Municipal Planning Commission has issued separate development permits for temporary 24-hour crushing operations, typically in 3-month increments. Administration feels that a separate permit for crushing during normal operating hours would be unnecessary. Therefore, administration is requesting an amendment to the conditions of development permit 23/122, and they're proposed as follows. So I've listed the conditions that the board approved back in 2023 for the original pit, and I've done some amendments to condition number 9. So I'm proposing for it to read, hours of operation, including crushing of materials, are approved as Monday to Saturday between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. And I'm proposing to remove condition number 12, that's requiring for a separate development permit for crushing activities. So as part of development permit 23/122, the applicant was required to enter into a road use agreement with Cypress County Public Works. At the time of application for crushing activities, a road use agreement had not been executed. However, in discussions with the applicant, they've now begun that process with Cypress County's industry coordinator, And I'll just add that late last week, I did receive a copy of the road use agreement, so it has now been executed. Since a development permit for a gravel pit is a Class 2 discretionary use and the approval conditions are recommended to be changed, the revised permit, should the board approve it, will need to be re-advertised for appeal purposes. The rest of the report is from the previous permit. Mr. Chairman, if you'd like me to read the full report, please let me know. But my recommendation has already been outlined. I do have pictures of the pit, though, if you want to pause for that. Okay, so this is from Township Road 94. We're looking north from the road approach on their private driveway into the pit. This is still from the approach looking west down Township Road 94 to Highway 41. So I just wanted to give you a view. You can see the pit site off in the distance on the right. I just wanted to show you that the closest yard site is off to the left. That's across the 41 highway, and there is no residence at that site. And this is from the same location. There's a neighboring residence to the east. It's relatively farther. It's over 1,000 meters. I just wanted to give you a view. So now when we go into the pit location and the proposed area of the crusher, as you go through the pictures, you can see it's kind of down in a sunken area with berms and hills all around. So you can't actually visualize those houses from inside. So just wanted you guys to get a view of that. So again, looking north, location of the crusher. And so this would be looking west where that residence was off in the distance, and east. So, okay, and that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Before we go any further, would any of the board members like the full explanation of the report? Or are we happy with it as it is presented? Okay, we're all good. All right, I think we can go on move based on that. Would you like to speak to the application at this time?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We're just looking to start up in producing more gravel for more, there's a lot more projects proposed for that area, and we'd just like to be able to provide gravel for them. And yeah, that's really all I have to say, unless there are any other questions.
Before I open up, I have one question. Have you spoke to the neighboring residents regarding the 7 to 7 amended hours of operation, or is that something you've?
I have not, but we can if you guys would like us to.
I don't think that's a requirement. Usually it's a courtesy, move on behalf of the applicant, but I mean, that's up to you. It's just something that we take into consideration when we're discussing the application. Open the floor to discussion. Dan?
Okay, I understand where you're going with this because houses are so far away, but we did put these in for the 24-hour crushing because of areas, and we're just trying to stay consistent with all the gravel pits. So this 7 to 7, but if they want to go 24 hours a day, are you going to want to come back and do a separate one for that?
Absolutely. If they're going to go outside or they plan to go outside of the hours outlined in their condition, they would require another permit for that, which again would be appealable and would come to the board. If the board isn't happy with the 7 to 7 hours, that can be adjusted. The land use bylaw isn't set in stone on hours unless it's within 300 meters of a multi-parcel subdivision. So in this case, I went with MJB's letter of intent and when they plan to, what their hours of operations were. If the board is more comfortable with different hours, we can definitely look at an amendment to that condition.
No, I'm fine with that. I guess it's all separate. If you got houses right beside them, we look at shorter hours and not just, but that's fine for this one. I just wanted to make sure we were good for the 24-hour if it came in place.
So there's been crushing obviously at this site in the past.
I believe prior to MJB taking over it, that there was crushing, but maybe Courtney can verify that, I'm not sure.
Yeah, there was. I don't recall who was doing the crushing, but yeah, it was an active gravel pit before we leased it from Voslers there.
Okay. Okay, any further discussion? Dustin's got it? Okay, Dustin moves approval of development application 23-122 revised. All those in favor? Carried. So your development permit has been approved, subject to meeting the conditions which were previously discussed. The county will now mail you a copy of your development permit. Since this is a discretionary use, there's a 3-week appeal period that the public may issue appeal the issuance of this permit. The permit will be advertised in the Cypress Courier newspaper for a duration of 3 consecutive weeks. If no appeal is filed within the 21 days, it will become valid at that time. If you have any further questions, you can contact the development officer after today's meeting to discuss them. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next for consideration today is development permit 23-181 Chanel Burger. So there is a button on the microphone in front of you that when asked to speak, if you would mind pressing that so everyone can hear you. Can you please introduce who else is with you?
This is Sheldon Jobert. He's a friend of the family. He's been helping me with this whole process.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so again, this is development application 23-181. Becky, go ahead, please.
So, Mr. Chairman, this is another similar situation. I'm requesting a revision to the original development permit. So again, if my background doesn't provide enough information for the new board members, just let me know and I can read further on. So this is a Ward 6 storage container application, and this was development permit 23/181. The owner is Wanda Burger and the applicant is Chanel Burger. And this is at Plan 1312914, Block 1, Lot 1. The property size is 3.61 acres, and it's a country residential District 1. The original proposal was for the placement of an 8x40 storage container and 2 existing storage containers. In 2023, the Municipal Planning Commission granted approval of development permit 23-181 for the placement of an 8x40 storage container and 2 existing storage containers. At the time of application, there was no principal building on the property. Therefore, the board imposed 2 additional conditions to the development permit to ensure compliance with the land use bylaw, section 12.1, accessory development and structures. The conditions are read as follows. Number 8, subject to a development agreement to be entered into between the applicant and Cypress County and to be registered against the Alberta Land Title for the removal of the 3 storage containers. And number 9 was subject to a 1-year time limit for the storage containers from the date of issue of this permit. And the reason for that was in section 12.1, it states that you can't have any accessory buildings prior to a principal dwelling unless you do those 2 items listed in 8 and 9. The development agreement was executed on November 23rd, 2023, and subsequently registered on the Alberta Land Title. In addition, the applicant recently submitted a time extension application for the storage containers, which started this process. In 2024, the applicant applied for and received development permit 24/129 for the placement of a move-on 12x24 cabin to be utilized for residential purposes. Now that the property contains a principal building, the storage containers could be considered as permanent accessory structures in the Country Residential District 1 as a Class 2 discretionary use and would no longer require the benefit of the above conditions. Therefore, administration is requesting a revision to Development Permit 23-181 for the removal of conditions 8 and 9 as outlined above. Since the keeping of storage containers is a discretionary use and the approval conditions are recommended to be changed, the revised permit, should the board approve it, will need to be re-advertised for appeal purposes. So I do have some pictures. So this is looking west. You can see the storage containers are off at the back of the property. There are only 2 on location right now, but the third is still planned to be moved on. And their principal building or cabin is just on the left there. And just another look, I guess, on this other side of the property to the northwest. And then this is just looking out to Range Road 70 to the east, where the existing approach is. So, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like me to read further, please let me know. But otherwise, my proposal is for the amendment to Development Permit 23-181.
Thank you, Becky. Before we go on, do any of the members of Planning Commission wish for further explanation on this permit application? Good with that? Okay, would the applicant like to speak to the application at this time? No, you're good? Okay, open the floor to discussion. Motions? So you want to move it? You move it? Nigel moves it? Okay, so Nigel moves approval of development application 23/181 with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Favor? Okay, carried. So your development application, development permit has been approved, subject to meeting the conditions which were previously presented. If the county will mail you a copy of your development permit. Since this is a discretionary use, there's now a 3-week appeal period that the public may appeal the issuance of the permit. The permit will be advertised for a duration of 3 consecutive weeks in the Cypress Courier newspaper. If no appeal is filed within 21 days, it will become valid at that time. If you have any further questions, you can talk to the planner after today's meeting to discuss them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so next on the agenda is 24CY11 subdivision application. Mr. Fielberg, would you like to take one of the chairs up front? You and your representatives? Good morning. Okay, so Mr. Harold Fielberg, and please introduce the other member of your...
This is Danny Fielberg. I'm Harold Fielberg. We are the owners of the property, and this is my son Dan, which will speak to it if you'd like to ask some questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, this is subdivision application 24CY11. Kayleen, go ahead, please.
Mr. Chairman, Becky is actually going to take this one away as well today.
Perfect. Becky, go ahead, please.
Unless you're sick of listening to me, but I would love to present it for you. This is subdivision 24CY11. The owner and applicant is Harold Fieldberg, and this is located on Range Road 71, approximately 3.3 kilometers west of the city of Medicine Hat, on the southeast 35-12-7 west of the 4th. This is currently zoned agricultural district 2, and the proposal is to subdivide a 4.24 hectare parcel containing an existing residence and yard site to create a separate title for a family member. The application is intended to subdivide a 4.24 hectare or 10.48 acre agricultural parcel from an unsubdivided quarter section for the purposes of creating a farmstead separation for the existing residence and yard site. The remainder of the agricultural title contains dryland pasture and is 64.7 hectares or 160 acres in size. I just noticed an error. There is irrigation on this quarter. There are no oil or gas wells in proximity to the proposed subdivision. The proposed subdivision area contains a residence, granaries, sheds, and a dugout. There are also 4 8x40 storage containers on the site. The water source is a cistern, and the residence utilizes a septic tile field. The proposed subdivision gains direct and immediate access from an existing approach from Range Road 71. A second access approach is located at the south end of the property, which gives access to the remnant agricultural title also from Range Road 71. The property contains a natural drainage area that runs north through the property past the residence. There is a dam with a pond located southwest of the residence. In addition, there are established trees and shrubs throughout the yard site. The applicant is proposing to incorporate the drainage area for continued use on the yard site. Administration has encouraged the applicant to reduce the overall parcel area. The subdivision will result in the first title to be taken out of the quarter section. A residence could still be developed on the remainder of the agricultural title, and the proposed subdivision is located outside of the Tri-Area Intermunicipal Development Plan boundary. The South Saskatchewan Regional Plan states that municipalities are to identify their agricultural land and to limit fragmentation and conversion to non-agricultural uses. Under the implementation section of the plan, section 5, efficient use of land, it states that the land use framework promotes approaches to reduce the amount of land that is taken up by permanent or long-term development by utilizing the minimum amount of land necessary. Section 663 of the Municipal Government Act states that a subdivision authority may not require the owner of a parcel of land that is subject of a proposed subdivision to provide reserve if one lot is to be created from a quarter section of land. Part 2.9, Road Access of the Subdivision Regulations of the Municipal Government Act states that every proposed subdivision must provide direct access to a road or lawful means of access satisfactory to the subdivision authority to each lot that is created. Section 4.1.24, Subdivision Farmstead of the Municipal Development Plan states that the county may support the subdivision of an existing farmstead or single vacant parcel if the following conditions are met. The location of the farmstead or single vacant parcel is in accordance with Figure 5, example of appropriate locations for agricultural subdivision. The agricultural parcel remains the balance of the quarter section. The subdivision will not impact or hinder the agricultural use on the balance of the quarter section. The subdivision parcel size for an existing farmstead is based on the area incorporating the farm dwelling and the accessory buildings and structures unless there are physical or topographic features which define a more practical, larger parcel. The subdivision of the existing farmstead or the single vacant parcel retain the same agricultural land use district as the remnant, and both the existing farmstead or single vacant parcel and the remnant agricultural parcel have direct or shared easement access to the existing municipal road network or provincial highway. In the Land Use Bylaw 2022-09, Section 12.19, Storage Containers, states that a development permit will not be required for the placement of up to 2 storage containers, but will be required for the placement of 3 or more storage containers as a Class 1 discretionary use within the Agricultural District 2. And utility easements may be required between the proposed parcel and the remainder of the agricultural title. So we did circulate the application, and Cypress County Finances replied that there are no local improvements associated with this parcel. No comments were received from Cypress County Public Works at the time of writing the report. Apex Utilities replied that they have no objection to the proposed subdivision. Fortis Alberta replied that they have reviewed the plan and determined no easement is required. TELUS replied that they have no concerns with the proposed activities. Equus replied that they have no objections to the proposed subdivision. They currently provide electrical services to the southeast 3512-7 west of the 4th and will need to maintain their existing right-of-way. The City of Medicine Hat's Environment, Land and Gas Production Department replied that they have reviewed the subdivision application and has the following comments. And they did supply a map to refer displaying gas facilities that are located within the proposed subdivision. Surface improvements are not permitted within the City of Medicine Hat pipeline utility right-of-way and within 100 meters of any City of Medicine Hat wellhead, unless the landowner applies to and receives approval from the Alberta Energy Regulator and the city for setback reduction. Any ground disturbances or surface improvements within 30 meters of any City of Medicine Hat gas pipeline or within 100 meters of any gas wells will require a crossing or proximity agreement. And St. Mary's River Irrigation District replied that they have reviewed the application, and if the subdivision is approved, requires that the following conditions are met. If the proposed subdivided homestead lot wishes to use water from the district for the yard site, a household purposes agreement must be signed with the district prior to any water use. All works, easements, etc. involved to provide water to the proposed subdivision will be at the landowner's expense. And in order for SMERD to execute consent to register subdivision, any outstanding balances owed by the applicant will need to be paid in full. The City of Medicine Hat Electric Distribution replied that they have no concerns with the proposal. And Alberta Transportation and Economic Corridors replied that Section 18 and 19 are met, therefore no variance is required. The department expects that the municipality will mitigate the impacts of traffic generated by developments approved on the local road connections to the highway system, pursuant to Policy 7 of the Provincial Land Use Policies and Section 618.4 of the Municipal Government Act. So before I move on to my recommendation, I did take pictures of this site because it's kind of unique. So this is from inside the yard looking west. The dam and pond area is in the trees off to the left there, but you can see the drainage area kind of borders along the north of the yard. And so this is looking east at the existing residence with Range Road 71 in the background, and I didn't capture it very well, but to the left where the trees and those bushes are is that drainage canal, or not canal, drainage area.
Is that, is that just for clarification, is that a SMERD registered drainage right away?
I don't believe so.
Okay. All right, go on. Sorry to interrupt. Go on.
It's okay. Then this is looking south from the same location. So we're at the residence in this picture, and you can see there's the granaries, shops, storage containers. Again, that drainage area is running to the right and to the dam and pond. And that's just another look west. So this, I went to the other side. So we're looking northeast. You can see the shops, the residences beyond those shops. And then that's the same location, but looking north at the dam area. And then this is from Range Road 71 looking into the site to the northwest. And then same location, but looking a little more west, and you can see to the south where the pivot kind of starts. Is that it, Ingrid? So I have two options today, Mr. Chairman. My first recommendation is approval, subject to the following conditions. Number one, the developer is required to obtain development permit approval from Cypress County for the existing additional storage containers contained on the subdivided parcel. The approval from Cypress County is to be issued prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. Number two, it is the developer's responsibility to enter into any necessary agreements with St. Mary's River Irrigation District for the supply of water to the proposed subdivision and the remnant parcel. The developer will be required to provide written evidence that the requirements of SMERD have been satisfied prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. And number three, our standard condition, the developer is required to supply copies of any utility right-of-way plans, easements, and/or agreements which are to be registered as a requirement for any affected utilities to Cypress County prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. And my second motion or alternative recommendation is postponement to allow the applicant surveyor to submit a revised tentative plan of subdivision, which reduces the overall area of the subdivision to accommodate the minimum area that's required for the existing yard site. That's my report, but just to go back to your question, maybe the applicant can confirm that for us on the drainage right-of-way.
Through the chair, I also verified on the Alberta land title, there is no drainage course registered through there for Smurd, so I think it would be considered the Fieldbird's private land.
So there are water rights on this quarter, correct?
You just turned it off.
Just one time, yeah, there you go.
Okay. Yes, there, we put water rights on it. There's a pivot on it as well now.
Okay.
Which is why you see the way the lines are drawn, is so that they correspond with.
Okay, so we're jumping ahead a little bit. Yeah, can you speak, you want to speak to this app? You're done, correct? Okay, thank you very much. So do you want to speak to your application at this point in time and just kind of explain it?
So what we did out here, the reason for this subdivision is because my sister died. She has a son. He's, I don't know what, Quinn is 24 now, my nephew. And we're just looking for a place for him to have a home, right? A location. We own the land, and it's a site, it has an old house on it, but there's subdivisions on the east side of the road, lots of them, all the way down the 71 there, paved road, and it's a nice location. It really doesn't cut anything out of the irrigation or create any issues for us, and we thought now was the time to set that up.
Okay, anything else? So you have a pivot in this, at the center of the quarter section now that does a windshield wipe?
Correct. Well, yeah, you can see on the south side that angled line, that actually comes right around to where the pivot stop is.
Oh, okay,
Right
gotcha.
there. But it can't go any further because of the dam and the draws there, right?
So that's why you made the subdivision this shape, is to allow for the swing of the pivot? And do you think that's all the irrigable area you're going to be able to get out of that parcel then, based on that?
Well, the pivot's already there. Yeah. And so we designed it to get as many irrigated acres as we could, right? Okay. And on the other side, it actually, the pivot stops, well out off of where that north line is.
Okay. All right, I'll open the floor to discussion. Go ahead, Dan.
Question for Becky. What's the minimum on the acreage for these?
Well, for Farmstead, we encourage to use the least amount possible to a max of 16 acres.
Do you have a reason for including the west portion of that kind of triangular shape? Okay. In the subdivision?
Not really.
No.
No.
Part of the water system.
Yeah, it's part of the the water system, the draw going back there. But it's,
My concern is having, like, a water body straddling the subdivision may cause issues down the road between, ownership of the two separate parcels.
well, and that's partly why that the water body is entirely inside the subdivision, right? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm just thinking to mitigate future problems, when bodies of water straddle, property lines, it can become an issue down the road. They're out there, but it would be, I think, in the best interest to avoid them if possible. Go ahead, Bill.
Option 2 that you explained has there been a surveyor's look at it or no, and what specifically are we asking for?
Yeah, the postponement would give an opportunity for the applicant to go back based on conversations with the board to possibly reduce the size of the subdivision. It has been surveyed, but a tentative plan of survey based on the map that you're looking at. It's unfortunate the surveyed plan does show a little bit more detail on the irrigation pivot on how far it comes around on each side, but this one still shows like more wheel move, but the postponement we would be asking them to reduce the overall parcel size.
But that's not your recommendation. You recommended approval, but you're saying that's another option that's always available.
Yeah, I gave 2 options. Mr. Fielberg did have a larger parcel when he originally came in to apply, and he did reduce it to what you're seeing today. But just knowing that the board may feel differently, I put another option in there for you.
Okay. Go ahead, Kaylin.
And a friendly reminder to the board, if the Planning Commission does opt to postpone the application, the applicants have to be in favor of that motion, because alternatively they could seek a refusal on the application and then appeal that to the appeal board.
Right. That's making the assumption that we would postpone it based on the size. Yeah. I mean, our mandate is to keep as much agricultural property in agricultural production as possible, right? So that's kind of where we struggle with these sort of things. Just trying to minimize sizes of country residential. Go ahead, Dan.
I agree with that, but on that note, the topography on this is really messed up, and I can understand why they're doing it. Normally, I'd be against this size going out, but understanding and looking at the computers here on everything that's going on there, I think it's one that even though we don't really want to pass it that big, it's probably one that we should pass up.
So the question I have is there any rationale for keeping that, I guess, seasonal water body in the subdivision? Is there a rationale that you've utilized to keep that in there, or is that just?
Yeah, go ahead.
The rationale that we had considered was on the south side, excuse me, on the south side of the boundary. That's the boundary of the irrigation pivot. And on the north side, it extends on the north side of the coulee on there. And the reason that we went that, because the water displayed on the map, that's a high level capacity of the dam. That's when it's full. So when the dam drains out, when the flood is off the dam, there's actually no permanent water outside of that subdivision. And my concern was if we were to try and split that water, there's a concern with having 2 titles, that water under 2 titles. So this is the only way I could conceive of, is to try and embody that whole piece of water, because to go on the east side, if you can see where that point is on the east side, it doesn't leave any yard at all. If we were to cut the subdivision off on the east side of the dam there, which is the side to the right on the map there, it would leave not a viable subdivision at all. So I thought it would be more convenient, and foreseeing there might be problems with split subdivision with water on there, to go and enclose that whole water body into the subdivision. And the water body for the subdivision, the water is necessary because you take water for the yard comes out of that dam. And so if we were to exclude the dam from there, there would be no water other than Schmerd water for the subdivision. So that's a subdivision there that supplies water for the rest of the yard, not the drinking water, but the rest of the yard. And so that was our concern, or that was my consideration when we made the suggestion. We had made the original suggestion to go further north with the north one along the top of the coulee, but I wasn't sure whether we would want to include, it's all coulee land and it's not really grazing land either, but I just wasn't sure what your considerations would be for that, so we drew it down to just north of the house there. But to me, I think it's rather important. If I was on your side of the fence, I would be concerned about splitting the water body between two titles, and that seemed to be our most logical conclusion, to try and make sure we don't legislate a problem. And there's some, and that seems to be a natural setup for yards as a coulee, and spaces on the south side for a corral and water. But that's what we were thinking about. Thank you for your attention.
So I have a question for you, Mr. Philberg. So that dam, that's filled by a submerged outlet right now?
It's filled with drainage.
Just natural drainage?
Yes.
Do you intend then, so you're going to put a domestic outlet for that yard site? Or is there one?
There's not a domestic, you mean a submerged water?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. We haven't considered it at all because it's, I would think that would be nice because the dam doesn't always have water in it. So probably down the road we would consider that, but that's quite a ways down the road. It'll be past my lifetime, I believe, but who knows?
So as of this time, your water supply for the acreage would be the dam and a cistern?
Yes, the cistern is the domestic water on there, and the dam is for the yard water.
Okay. Okay. That clarifies things. Okay, so Dustin moves approval a subdivision application 24/CY11 with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Carried. So your subdivision application has been approved, subject to meeting the conditions which were previously discussed. The county will now mail you a copy of your subdivision approval. You're advised to begin working towards completing the necessary conditions and making arrangements to have the approved area subdivided if you have not already done so. You have 1 year from the subdivision's approval date to have met all of the approval conditions and to have the surveyor plan submitted to Alberta Land Titles for your registration of the separate title. If you have any further questions, you may contact the planner to discuss them after today's meeting. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, next on the agenda is the planner's report. Any discussions, input, or otherwise?
Yeah, the November 2024 Planners Report is attached for your information, and I'm happy to take any questions. Probably notable on this report is an appeal that was launched by an adjacent landowner to a Class 1 gravel pit that the Planning Commission approved back in September. And due to the size of the pit, it had to go before the Land and Property Rights Tribunal for the hearing, and they just held that last Thursday. So we'll await the decision of the tribunal, and we'll be sure to share that with the Planning Commission once it's released. Other notable item is the Medicine Hat River Hazard Study. That's a project that the province has been working on for several years, and we're happy that it's completed, and we will take into account the mapping and the availability of some of that information in our decisions. So we're happy to have that at our leisure. And other than that, I'm happy to take any questions that there may be.
So that hazard study is based on flooding? I thought we already did the flood planning and such for all those water bodies. Is the hazard assessment something different?
Yeah, so this is pertinent to the city of Medicine Hat and the South Saskatchewan River. And for the purposes of the county, it shows the impacts to the creeks that form part of that basin. So the Ross Creek, Seven Persons Creek, we currently have mapping for Irvin and Walsh, but we hadn't had this information to our use yet. So what we'll do is we'll embed that mapping into our own internal mapping programs, and then that'll help to inform our decisions. And it's also great information to landowners that might be looking to develop in some of those prone areas.
IDP updates, what's happening with IDP?
We are continuing our weekly working group meetings, and we're currently planning for our second open house for the project, which will be on the 28th of November. So absolutely come out to that event, learn more about it. But I think overall things are going well. I think we're on track. Still some work to do, but yeah, if anything else, if Reeve Dan has anything further to add, I can call on him too as well.
Yeah, and enlighten us.
It's actually pretty shocking on how many people think that this is something new that's coming in. And that's why they showed up to fight against it. Why are you doing this? And they did not realize that the IDP is already there. And we're just trying to downsize it and make it a little better for the land owners around. So it was quite shocking. I would say probably 60% thought it was new that showed up at the open house. So I guess education is a big thing to get out there for people.
One of the tricky parts too is trying to find a balance between everybody's interests, because especially closer proximity to the city, of course you want to protect the city's interests for their long-term growth. You also want to respect the rights of landowners to develop their land, and also those in that area that don't want further neighbors, right? So it's trying to strike a balance of all three of those things.
Agreed. Any other discussion? Accept the motion to approve the planners report. Bill moves approval of the planners report as presented. All those in favor? Carried. Any other business arising? Nothing. Okay. All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I adjourn the meeting. Oh, before I adjourn, I've already adjourned the meeting, but next meeting is Tuesday, December 10th.